Everything we do as an organization, I think, should be done at least with the intent of making us measurably better. So every meeting should pass the test. If we're going to have one-on-ones, how is that going to help create more value for the organization, which includes all stakeholders? So I think one of the biggest mistakes in team meetings, aside from there's no clear value creation purpose for it, is you can get 7, 8, 12 people in a room and it's just a whole bunch of two-person conversations going on. It's not organized in a way to really create value. And you spend the majority of the time getting the lay of the land and you didn't do anything.
Today's episode is about how teams and leaders can focus on what truly drives results. Our guest, Lee Benson, built an entire company doing just that. He spent years helping teams cut through the noise and align around what he calls, to quote him, the most important number. His book, Your Most Important Number, breaks that down, along with his framework for building accountable, high-performing cultures. So I wanted to ask him, how do you figure out your most important number? And how do you know if your team is creating value or just busy? Let's get to it. This is PodCrash. Probably be great if you could give our listeners some background on yourself. I know a little bit of the story, but it'd be great if you could give us a quick version.
Yeah, sure. On the business side, I've actually started 8 companies from scratch. I've had 3 exits so far, one 9 figures, one 8, and one 7 figures. And I'm still in the game. I absolutely love it. I guess it was really a business, but I don't count it as one of the 8. In the 80s, I played in a rock and roll band and over 1,000 nights the first half of the 80s out in shows, concerts, clubs, all that.
That's a busy schedule. Wow.
Yeah, had a sound crew, light crew, stage crew, manager. I mean, there's employees and it's a business. It's how I made most of my money back then. It was so much fun. I graduated high school in 1980. But I've been on this journey of, how do you create more and more value with folks, through companies. And so I've had my own businesses. I have a consulting company. I work with lots of nonprofits, consult with companies ranging from startup to north of $60 billion market cap, all around intentionally creating more and more value, which I think is the number one job of a CEO. I mean, I think that's your job, continually and responsibly increase the value of your business. I think about it the same way with my businesses and all the folks that I work with.
I think it's awesome how you're able to articulate it too. And, some of my questions be hopefully to help myself and listeners understand how you go about organizing. The obvious thought process or the idea of needing to create value is great, but you've done some things successfully that I think some of the tips would be really helpful. One of the things that you speak to is every team kind of having a most important number, so to speak, and that most important number that would define success. How'd you come up with that?
Well, over the years, and I know this sounds incredibly obvious, but it's not so obvious to most team members. Every company should be designed to create value, and there's a measure of that value. And in the for-profit world, generally, it's going to be some version of profit, EBITDA. If you go to sell it someday, you get a multiple of that. Okay, so we want to responsibly grow that over time. And every single role inside the organization should be aligned to that. Every team and every team member should be aligned to it. And when we hire team members, we should have a clear idea when they come on board as to why we're investing in them. So, hey, you start, you're going to create this value. Here's how we're going to measure it. And do you believe that you can create this value? We're starting here, here's where we're going. And the answer is almost always absolutely. Great. Also, do you understand if you fall below a certain line, this probably won't work? And, oh yeah, I totally get that. And we'll have that discussion. And it makes that discussion easier when you do it. So just sort of, going along and building my different businesses, how do I get more people aligned to increasing the value of the business responsibly? And I can write, just like you and most leaders, we can write out this amazing plan and all these details in spreadsheets. But how do all of our team members consume it? The biggest company that I had that I sold had just over 500 team members. How do I get everybody to understand the game? And so that's where I came down to, well, there's one number above all others that describes the value of a business and will drive the majority of the right behaviors. And so simply in the for-profit world, it's some version of profit typically. But as you go down to the other teams, same thing. So what's that number that describes the value they were designed to create? It could be marketing, for example, and it could be simply qualified leads. Well, what is a qualified lead? Are we really generating them? And whatever that most important number is, has to also drive the majority of the right behaviors. We're still going to measure 5 to 50 other things, and every business is different. And those other things we measure, we're measuring to help us make better decisions to improve our team's most important number. But there is one, and the litmus test to make sure that it is the right one is that you make a list of behaviors. What behaviors will it drive that help the company or the team, and what behaviors will it drive that will hurt the company or the team? And you want the one that drives the majority of the right behaviors. And there's tons of examples of what that looks like. But that's how I came up with it. I wanted something really simple that everybody could understand, easy to scale out to the front lines quickly, for a company of any size. And this worked. And I published a book a few years ago, titled Your Most Important Number, just updated it late last year. And it's all about this concept and how to make it go.
Like you said, it seems really obvious, but it's amazing, especially with all the other numbers that you have available to you through data today in business. Figuring out which lever to really concentrate on is a challenge. Um, you've made a statement before that you've learned to never estimate someone's ability to not connect the dots. I
Yeah.
assume that would apply to this kind of conversation as well.
Oh, oh,
Why you make that statement?
yeah. I started saying that a long time ago, where we assume everybody gets it. Well, they just don't. And so I started saying, I'll never underestimate adults' ability to almost always never connect the dots. And so we have to constantly connect it for them. So if we've got this most important number at the top of the organization that the CEO and the senior team is huddled around, everyone else has theirs, and when they improve theirs, it accretes up and goes to the top. Once they would demonstrate, because I would ask the question, "Hey, where are you at on your most important number?" And once this is stood up, and it doesn't take very long, every team member would say, "Oh, here's where we're at. Like, here's where we started. This is where we're going. We're currently on track. We're overdriving. We're slightly behind." Whatever that is, and then the next question I ask, "Well, what's the best work you're doing to improve what's most important?" And the leader would say, "Well, here's everything I'm doing. It's how I'm organizing the team." A non-supervisor team member says, "Well, here's my team's most important number, and here's my role and how I'm designed to create value, and this is the best work I'm doing to improve it." That simple language sets the stage where everybody gets it quickly, all the way to the front line. So again, I don't know about for you, Matt, but every time uh, we go into a meeting and people nod and say they understand. If you really look at it, often they don't. Right? Have you experienced that too?
Yeah, all the time, and
Yeah.
that's why, a lot of leadership is repetitive too. And honestly, like, it's not a criticism of others because it happens to me all the time where, let's say, I think I get something. I think I understand it, and then I learn about it from a different angle or experience it enough times where it clicks at another level, and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't really understand it before, but I understand it now." That
Yeah.
happens to me a lot, but the concept of, like, profit being the most important number should be easy. It amazes me. Like, let me throw out some kind of pushback. Like, you hear, like, "Oh, now the company's just about profit." Like, there would be a pushback statement to having profit be your most important number. I know how I would handle that conversation, but curious how you handle that kind of a pushback to the message of that one important number.
Yeah, I don't think that driving for results to increase the value of the business and caring about people, they're not mutually exclusive. Like, the more I drove for improving results and the way I talk about it, just like you talk about it in your business, the more we grow, the more valuable we are, the more opportunities for all internal team members, stakeholders, really across the board. This is so good for all of us. And when we accomplish that, there's a sense of like fulfillment, personal achievement when we're accomplishing challenging things. Self-esteem goes up with all the employees. It's like they're completely interlinked to me. And so we have to be more profitable. We need to be able to survive, recessions, downturns, and all of that to be stronger for all of our team members and their families. So this is incredibly important to do it. And I always talk about creating value holistically. We need to make money. We need cash flow. We need all this to go through, and every business is different. In my capital intensive aerospace companies from the past, cash flow was my most important number because we were so capital intensive. But when we sold the company, it was based on EBITDA. But I also thought about emotional energy, value creation. It was the X factor for my leaders. And I called the bucket spiritual value creation, but it's connectedness. So what are all the programs we can have in place to strengthen connections between team members? And did a lot of that stuff. So I could go on and on about why it's so important to do well as a business. But I always talk about it as holistic value creation in all three buckets, and what the benefit is to all of the stakeholders for doing it. And I've never once really had anybody say, "Oh, you all you care about's the money, you don't care about people." No, I really the team is what's most important. We're on this journey together. This isn't some big transactional relationship. Like, we're creating value together, and this is fun, and it should be.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. My commentary on any kind of that is always, well, profitability is a key component of survival for the company. So if you don't have that, all the other good that you want to accomplish is going to be pretty difficult. You have to survive first, and profit is needed to do that in a business setting anyway.
Yeah, 100%. Well, even in a nonprofit setting, right? You run out of cash, everybody's out of a job.
Yeah.
So and I even in some cases, I think what some folks are saying, and it's a cop out to me, is like, I'm a good person and I'm for doing these things over here. Like somehow profit is separate from all of that. And it's a cop out. I think we all need to cultivate our abilities to create material value, positive emotional energy value, and connectedness or spiritual value. And let's do it in balance. And just because we haven't spent the time that we probably should to create material value for our family, for the company we work for our own company, whatever that is, uh, you know, doesn't mean when it's not working, you're good and profit's bad. No, profit is really good. I mean, money's a tool, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's important to highlight, you talk about value creation in those three main buckets. Really, you do that often.
Yeah.
And so it's not just money, it's not just material. Maybe talk about those three buckets, and your thought process that kind of led to always talking about the three components that are important instead of just over indexing the one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think how we feel going through life is really what's most important. If I were to have an internal most important number, which I do, it's internal, it's fulfillment. And that can, elevate every single year if I'm doing the right work going through. And so when I think about a business and I want all this to be in balance, the material part is really important. And I never say, like, you a lot of folks preface it, well, it's not about the money. It's like it needs to also be about the money. It's really important. And the reason for me that the emotional energy value creation and the spiritual value creation buckets are so important, it's about productive energy. So when people talk about employee engagement, I always ask, well, engage with what? What are you talking about? And there's surveys that go out, and the best friend at work surveys and all the other ones. Like, if you don't score high, what do you do? Put a best friend at work program in place? Man, I don't get it. So for me, employee engagement should be engaged with the value they were hired to create. So if we intentionally design every role with here's one to max four, usually no more than two or three outcome-based responsibilities they have that we're going to measure, and it's reflective of the value that they're going to be creating. We hired them, we made an investment in them, they're agreeing to do this stuff. That's essentially, where it's at. So engagement to me is engage with creating the value we hired you to create, that you agree to create. And the higher the sort of emotional energy, which I call the scarcest commodity on the planet because it supercharges everything else that we're doing, the higher that is, the more productive engagement you can get as long as you have it structured properly. If you haven't structured it this way and people are running around doing stuff, and when you ask them how they create value, they just give you a job description, there's a big opportunity there to create even more value as a business. So we need to structure it right so we're clear about that value. And then the more connected they are, within the team member relationships. And I think you really build connection through accomplishing challenging things. It's like being on a winning sports team. Everybody runs through walls for everybody. They can't wait to be there. They can't wait to do it. I think it's one of the best ways to do it. So that's why I think about it holistically for my businesses. It's not this cool, nice thing to do. No, it's all part of it. It's all so important. If we want to responsibly and continually grow the value of the business, and we want amazing productive engagement, we have to get the emotional energy piece of it right, and a lot of that flows, most of it really, through the leadership team, and we have to get the connectedness piece right in the different programs to make that happen. How does that land on you, Matt? I know we talked a little bit about this last conversation.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You know what I think that I'm hearing from you that I can do even better and probably should really look into is it sounds like you've got that value driven or that create value conversation happening really pre-hire or at the time of hire. Um, I think I might be relying a little bit, not to say we're horrible, but I think I might be relying a little bit on, well, that's implied, like everybody knows that. And I need to remember maybe that statement of don't underestimate their ability to not connect that dot. Um, because I do think we get a lot of hard work going on and people want to be rewarded for the hard work and appreciated for the hard work, but it doesn't mean they got the result we wanted.
Mm.
And that's a big disconnect that I feel we could do. I would love to close the gap at Crash Champions on that. And I think what I'm hearing from you is stronger conversation at the beginning is helpful from what you've seen.
Yeah, 100%. And think about the time it saves later if you get it right. So when you design a role, the way I think about it in our mind management systems, again, I outline it in my book, is that you have these outcome-based responsibilities. So these are the, 1 to 3, maybe 4 things we're going to measure you on, and we're going to get agreement. When you come in, you're going to start here over a certain amount of time. It depends on the role. This is how we're going to track it, and we want you to be on track or over delivering, but it can't go below this line. So now we're clear on that.
Yep.
And then there's a clear list of, job duties, like administrative things that a lot of us, don't love doing, but it's part of every single job that we have to do. And then we've got this development plan. So when we look at these outcomes, we look at all these things that are required to be done to achieve the results. Now we've got a development plan where we're constantly developing every team member to create more and more value for themselves and the business. So just taking a little bit of time to develop basically these outcomes, these job duties, and these capabilities that they need. Which again, capabilities drives your development plan. A little bit of time up front on that. Everybody's clear. They all create more value out of the gate. It's so worth it to take a little bit of time and design the roles that way. And then to your point, have that discussion right up front. And so you've got all of that, and then you have your alignment tools. This is our mission, where we're going. This is what a mission, i.e., what we do every day to win. We have a vision. This is where we're going, and a set of, I like behaviors. These are the behaviors that cause the most value to be created inside the organization. That's a pretty easy discussion, and I think most employees coming on board really appreciate that. It's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm in the loop on this.
Yeah, I love it. Now, in your examples of working with other companies,
Yeah.
and let's say it hasn't been introduced, how does that work out at the beginning for introducing it into an organization that isn't at the point where you're describing, where it's the way we live and it's explained from the beginning. You're kind of walking in and they haven't operated in that mode. A lot of pushback, or how do you get the message to resonate?
That's such a great question, and the answer is it depends based on the culture that's there. So like any culture, if you go too fast, you can blow things up and you don't want to do that. It's simple, but there's a lot at the same time. I always like to start with the senior leadership team and get agreement. Like one of my questions I'll ask is, hey, philosophically, I just believe that the job of the CEO and by proxy the senior leadership team is to continually, and I always add, responsibly increase the value of the business because it's good for every stakeholder. What do you think about that? And the answer's, almost never, "Oh, yeah, of course. Of course, everybody knows that." It's like, "Yeah, that makes a lot of sense." And I've had a number of CEOs say, "Finally, I know what my job is." Okay, great.
Right.
And again, so now the whole senior team's around that. So what is that number that's reflective of the value you're gonna sell the business today? How would they calculate it? So that's your clue as to what your number is. So let's start there. Now, what's the best work we can do as a senior leadership team to drive it? Well, now we've got this the way I think about it, you've got this value chain sort of flow structure, this value creation flow structure, starting with overall awareness. Now you're in the marketing camp, generating marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads, closing sales, onboarding, delivering that product or service, whatever it is, ongoing experience. Every company can be a little bit to a lot different, but you have from awareness to ongoing customer experience, retention, all of that you've got all these links in this chain. I call it your value creation, flow structure. And then you've got your support structure. So it could be finance, maybe HR, operations, legal, et cetera. And their job is to make sure that every one of these links in that value creation flow chain are being supported the best they can so they can do their best work the highest percentage of the time, not recreate the wheel on a number of things that can just be provided as a support. And so that's where I start with a senior team, and then we just work our way down as we go to each team. Hey, what's their most important number, and how do you want to measure it? Where are they going to start? Where are they going? And then how do you organize the best work they can do to continually improve? And then you start dropping in strategies. So you have these strategic initiatives essentially, and how do you disseminate it? Well, being clear about the value employees bring when they come on board and throughout their tenure, I think that's really important. So you put it in at the rate an organization can handle it, but always starting at the top. I've had leaders say, "Hey, give us time to make things perfect before you get started." It's like, no, the more chaotic it is, the better the time for us to come in and start organizing it. And don't feel bad, you're in business, most of you are doing really, really well or just kind of okay, so you've got something going on, you've been doing a lot of great stuff, now let's do even better going forward. So start at the top, go at the pace the culture will allow, for in that organization.
Yeah, that's great. And I assume a lot of big companies are this way. So we've got these locations across the US. We've got um all the shops where the work is done are really the profit centers. And then you've got the corporate support departments. Um those aren't so much, they don't drive the profitability because they're dependent upon the shop to do it. So your value creation for them is defined in a different way, I would assume, because I get frustration from our support teams on that because we kind of judge the whole company and its progress all together, and maybe their department is like really done some transformational great things, but if it doesn't flow to the bottom line, if we're not careful, it doesn't get recognized because of the focus on profitability. Any thoughts on that? You define it differently for the departments,
Yeah.
but still keep them engaged in overall company performance?
So I love that question. I love thinking about that. So you've got your individual locations, and is it gross margin contribution, cash flow, profit by each individual location? Like that's pretty easy to measure as their most important number, and then you can organize the best work they can do to continually contribute at a higher level along those lines. And then when I think about the support structure, I think of them as enablers of value creation. So all the work they collectively do should cause an increase in profitability at a lowering relative cost of support over time. That's it. Now, I've worked with a lot of large companies where I'm looking at these different functions, HR, finance, legal, engineering, et cetera, quality, And oh my gosh, they're building empires and they want more budget every year. They're not thinking about their role as, as this collective support structure is enabling value to be created at a higher level at a lowering and lowering relative cost over time.
Yeah.
How does that land on you?
Yeah, it sounds exactly right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've been really good about that in my company, but I see it when new leaders come in. Like, we call it a little bit of a fiefdom, like they start to create their own fiefdom, and that runs contrary to what you're trying to do. And it's really important for us to not burden. I describe it to the organization as like we can't have a prize-winning racehorse and put a 600-pound jockey on top of it and expect it to win. When we consider the support department's kind of the jockey riding the horse, it's got to be lean in order for the horse to do what it can do.
Yeah, and any new initiative that's gonna be rolled out by one of the support functions, before it's even really being worked on, there has to be some idea of what the return on investment will be for doing it. Like, we're gonna put in this new, ERP system or CRM or whatever it is. We expect it to improve profitability by location by 3%, 4%, 6%, whatever that is. And here's our justification for that. These are our assumptions. And everybody kicks it around, where I see too many times where they just do things because they think it's cool, but they never did an ROI analysis before even doing it. And a classic example is, would be this category of IT. Hey, we're going to completely change out this system or that system. And I'll ask the same kind of question. So what do you expect to be different? Like, what's the ROI for doing it? And I'll sometimes get folks, oh, that's a really good idea. We should actually measure that. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
well, why are we even doing this in the first place?
Yeah, great point. To pivot a little, one thing that I learned that you really believe in is one-on-ones are important, and effective one-on-ones even more important. And I think listeners could really benefit from your take on the importance of one-on-ones and effectiveness of them.
Yeah, for any meeting and, in particular, one-on-one. So this would be, uh, with a manager and one of their direct report, team members. There should be a clear purpose. So if we're going to have the meeting, how is it going to create value for the company, for each stakeholder, all of that? And just taking a little bit of time to say, we're going to have this meeting and this is why we're doing it. And this is the value that we want to create. So I love in a one-to-one, to keep working on continuous improvement or, continually creating more value. Start with, hey, what's your biggest win since we met last? And in all of my businesses, I've set a rule that managers, leaders have to meet with their direct reports no less than once a month, and it should be for a full hour. This isn't about efficiently getting through something. It's about developing that team member, to create more value for the team and themselves. And so start with, hey, what's your biggest win since we met last? And so you have that. And then two, what's the best work that you're doing to improve what's most important? So now they're describing what they're doing. And then three, where do you need help? Where are there obstacles? Where are there things that I can help remove barriers so you can create even more value? So that's a really simple way to look at it. What's your biggest win? What's the best work you're doing to improve what's most important? And where are you running into roadblocks or obstacles? How does that sound?
It sounds very, very good. Especially because you can get caught up in like the current problem. Like sometimes one-on-ones I notice can easily go to like getting consumed with the current problem. Um, but I love the structure of making sure you also touch on what's your biggest win. And I've always believed that, okay, overall plan, how are we doing? Like we can talk about the current hot things, but like overall plan, what's the progress?
Yeah. Well, and I think our alignment tools can help with that as well. So when I created my first run at, and this was late 90s, a set of behaviors. I wanted a purpose for each set of alignment tools or standalone alignment tools, and how it would make the company more successful by having them even before we drafted them. And I wanted a set of behaviors that would do two things that would tell customers, in a compelling way, why should you do business with us, why employees get a paycheck. and drive the behaviors of the winningest employees I've ever worked with on their best days. And so if you have a set of behaviors that says, hey, high performing team members throughout the organization present and pursue permanent solutions as opposed to dwelling on problems. I'm not a fan of going into meetings where everybody swirls around and dwells on problems. What's your solution? Like, this is what's going on. Here's how it happened. Here's how I would suggest getting in front of it. That's super productive and not draining going through. Or treat company resources as your own, or be respectful, honest, and straightforward. Fully engaged, participate within the team. I love having a set of behaviors that is reflective of the behaviors that will cause the most value to be created in our environment within this business. Does that make sense, Matt?
It does. So, what do you think the biggest common mistake about meetings is? I guess the one-on-ones or just meetings in general. Um, where do you think you see people go wrong most often?
There's no clear purpose for having it. So everything we do as an organization, I think, should be done at least with the intent of making us measurably better. I'm sure you and I both have. I know I have done a lot of things I thought would make us better. It didn't work out. My assumptions were wrong, but it should be done with the intent of that. So every meeting should pass the test. If we're going to have one-on-ones, how is that going to help create more value for the organization, which includes all stakeholders? And same thing with team meetings. I think one of the biggest mistakes in team meetings, aside from there's no clear value creation purpose for it, is you can get 7, 8, 12 people in a room, and it's just a whole bunch of two-person conversations going on. It's not organized in a way, and to really create value, and you spend the majority of the time getting the lay of the land, and you didn't do anything. And I've worked with some really large companies, and there'll be a staff meeting, every week, and they just go around, okay, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? It's like there's no structure to that. And what I'm a super fan of in team meetings is those 3 questions for every team member before the meeting, preferably the day before, but at least more than an hour before the meeting. I want to capture at a place where we all can read it before the meeting. Hey, what's your biggest win? What's the best work that you're doing to improve what's most important? And where do you need help? Or what information should we know to make better decisions? So now we've read all of that. We don't need to spend any time getting the lay of the land. We just dig right into where we are on the most important number. What are the actions that we're following up on? What are the things we're doing to continually and responsibly increase value as a team or for the overall company if it's a senior team?
Yeah, I love it. You know, uh, one thing I always question too is the how often the meetings, especially in a weekly cadence. You've only had 4 business days in between the 2 meetings and if it's a big initiative, you probably haven't accomplished much in 4 days. So you want to keep everything front of mind, but sometimes I'm really careful to not meet too often. Obviously, you don't want to go more than a month, but weekly is quick updates, and then monthly is more in depth. Is the kind of way we do them here. Not sure if that always works, but I always felt like meeting again 3, 4 business days later, unless it's a short task. Like I didn't know you can't really move the needle that much.
Yeah, I agree. And I think every meeting, when it has a purpose, you'll come up with the right cadence. And I think newer teams, the cadence can be shorter, and then it can start extending. But it's wild in my experience when we don't have time for meetings because there's so much going on, but we always have time to do something twice or 3 times because we didn't meet to get it right the first time.
Yeah.
So I think that, the right cadence will be different depending what the value is a team's trying to create. And if there's just structure and purpose, I think it's wonderful. I love senior teams meeting once a week with the right structure. You're never out of stuff to do. And if the meeting only takes 30 minutes, great. If it takes an hour, then that's okay too. But we're not meeting just for the sake of meeting. We're here to create value faster.
That's right. One thing that I've seen that you talk about, and I so agree with this, I think it's so important, is you emphasize making performance visible. And so, like, I always felt like knowing the score and knowing where you are in the game is so important. Otherwise, how do you win it? Maybe anything tips you could give us on effective kind of team scoreboards? If you create scoreboards, every business is different, but how do you go into how do you think about if you're going in to create one, what are you thinking about?
Yeah. What I love about having a most important number process, and I call it the mind management system, which is most important number and drivers. Drivers are categories of work that each team can work on that are evergreen to continually create more value. So I love that. And if you think about a scoreboard for the team, now the the most important number is the one number that we're all working to improve. It's like you're on a professional sports team. We're trying to win the game, and that's showing it. We'll also have another dashboard of leading indicators, mostly that help us make better decisions to win the game and improve that most important number. But we're all around that, and we're having regular conversations about the best work that we're doing. It's not, oh, Joe or Susie are really messing up. Look at them falling behind over off to the side. So I love the we're winning or losing the game. We can all see it on a scoreboard for a team, and that feels a lot better. I think it's how we like to interact a lot more than everybody's got their own individual numbers, and uh, that can be a challenge to maintain in the right way. One quick note on that is it's interesting going into companies, and I'll audit the goals, I have my team audit the goals, and very few of them are very thoughtful. So everybody's got stuff that's going on, and in a lot of cases, they're all winning and they're achieving goals, but the company isn't going anywhere. And so that's not working either, along those lines. So that's why another reason I came up with your most important number as a concept. It's a great visual right in front of the team to say we're winning or losing.
Love it. I've learned when we're doing stuff and new initiatives, I used to just roll with stuff and now we have to more pilot it to see how effective it is because I've seen so many times when you think a number's going to do something, but it doesn't. So an example of that would be, in our business, it takes technicians in order to produce the work. And you have opportunity throughout the country where you don't have enough technicians. So you think adding a technician is going to naturally translate into more revenue. So you reward or incentivize or talk about adding technicians, and they do that. But it didn't necessarily, they did what I told them to do. They added more people, but it didn't necessarily mean that they added more revenue. So it's a little bit of digging even further, like, what am I really trying to get? Like, because the more you can look at what do I really, really, really want, and all these other numbers just support it, then you got to make sure you deliver that message. Because otherwise they'll give you what you asked for, but it's not going to give you the effect that you thought it would. I've experienced that a few times.
Yeah, and a simple way, and your journey is amazing, going from a few locations and then in a few years getting to 650 and climbing. It's spectacular. And I love that you're in a position where you can test certain things to see the effectiveness of it. But the simplest way I would be thinking about it, is every location is generating, positive cash flow or profit in some way. And so that's what I'm holding each of the store managers accountable to. The regional managers, same thing. Not sure what the total structure is.
Yep.
And then inside the organization, every most important number, every set of outcome-based responsibilities, when they're achieved or overachieved, should be contributing to that. And a super simple example that I run into a lot of, what's the right most important number and can you have a wrong most important number? And that's why I added that test, which says you need to make a list of behaviors that number will drive that will be helpful or and or harmful. And so you've got these two lists. And with HR, a lot of times the first place they go and they say, oh, our most important number is retention. It's like, okay, well, let's play that out. You hire me to run HR. We're 3 years down the road. I've kept 97% of all of our people. I've won on my most important number. Never mind that 80% of our team can't do the job we hired them to do. I kept them. So at retention, I knocked it out of the park. So that did not drive the majority of the right behaviors. And what I think is a better number for HR, one that I like, is the percentage of seats filled with capable people. And capable defined as we have this role defined the way we talked about earlier. We're measuring the value that they agreed to create, for our investment in them. So it's win-win. and they're capable if they're achieving or over delivering on those outcomes that they agreed to achieve, the value that they create. So now we know they're capable. And then you can, sort of weight that, because the higher you go in an organization from a leadership standpoint, having somebody that's not capable in a role can have a much bigger impact than a frontline technician, for example. But we want all roles filled with capable people. Now we're driving a majority of the right behaviors because we're developing leaders better, we're onboarding better, we're clear with job roles, responsibilities, all of that stuff. Now that makes sense, right?
Yeah, sure does. Thoughts on someone who is a team or an individual that is falling behind? Your thoughts on how do you not demotivate them? How do they're clearly, you're going to have a plan, say, laid out for the year, and Q1 has gone by and they're clearly not going to hit it. What are your thoughts on, not demotivating them, keeping them in the game?
Yeah, I'm a fan of treating everybody like an adult, and I believe that everybody should know what's expected and where they stand regarding their performance 100% of the time. I think it's the most caring thing that we can do. And if you start somebody out, so let's just, I'm sort of guessing here. Maybe you're talking about a store manager or a regional manager or something like that. If their outcome-based responsibility is measured in, profit from this store or this location, this region, I always say when they start, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, here's why we're hiring you. We want to achieve this. Do you think you can do it? And the answer again is almost always absolutely. I said, great. Now, if it falls below this line, this won't work. Do you understand that? Because that's why we're investing in this. And most of the time, what I hear is, oh, I totally understand that. Yeah. And if that happens, then there's something wrong with me. It's like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. I'll appreciate that you tried, but this is really important. And so many other team members rely on, this number and all these other collective numbers happening so we can grow the company and make sure we all have a job. Great. So now, as soon as in your scenario, we're closing towards the end of Q1, they're not going to hit it. It's not looking good. If it's fallen below that lower line that you designed, I bring him in and say, yeah, I really appreciate that you gave this a shot, but we need to make a change here. And 9 times out of 10 or more, it's like, yeah, I totally get it. This is what we talked about. So there's no surprises whatsoever. Occasionally, individuals have kind of played this, but don't you think I'm a good person and I worked really hard and all of it? It's like, yeah, I think you're a great person, and I appreciate the effort that you put into it, but there's too many other pieces in this organization that rely on these numbers collectively working. This is what we agreed to. And then, let me help you with the transition. So we're going to give you the severance and we can help you find another job and do all this stuff. And one of the rules that I've put in place for my leaders, starting a couple of decades ago, is anybody that leaves, with very few exceptions, you have to stay in touch with them. You hire them on your team for at least a year. You have to follow them, stay in touch with them. You call them, you check in, how's it going? And that's proved to be an amazing policy for me. And I always said, even whenever we had employees that were really disgruntled, give them to me as the CEO and I will follow them. And they would be quite upset sometimes when I would call them and say, yeah, I know it wasn't the right cultural fit for you. How's it going now? What's going on over there? And pretty common that if they stayed in the industry within a year, they're sending us business if they're in a supply chain type position or something else. And some of those very disgruntled folks, I'm still in touch with 20 years later today. It's good for business. If we say we care about people, it's the right thing to do, and it's all about community and strengthening relationships because we're going through life together, and not everybody's a perfect fit. I mean, it's probably a bigger answer than you were looking for, but it's philosophically how I think about it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, it's great. That's something that I mean, okay, everybody has heard of, and we do an exit interview, but you stayed in touch with everybody for at least a year after they left. Even if they stole from you, for example, you would still run the team through that,
Yeah,
stay in
the
touch with them.
the few cases where folks were, like, really bad actors,
I mean, that's really rare, don't get me wrong, but yeah,
it's
like
it's
stuff
rare.
happens.
For those, I wouldn't. It's like, what am I trying to salvage? But for
Gotcha.
vast majority, 99 plus out of 100, they want to win. They want to do a good job. It just wasn't, either it wasn't a cultural fit or they were in the wrong position where they didn't have capability to achieve the outcomes that that role required. And we didn't have another place for them, to find the right fit. Usually it's a culture fit, in my experience when people leave. And so, yeah, I'd stay in touch with them. And I learned the lesson in the, I guess, mid 90s, 96, 97, somewhere in there. Let somebody go, didn't stay in touch with them. They went to work for our largest customer at the time. This is a long time ago. It was a company called America West Airlines. They've since been gobbled up a long time ago by American Airlines. And this individual got into their quality department and just turned us off. And we're a small company back then, but it was still $700,000 a year worth of work, just disappeared overnight. And the whole time that was happening, he was talking to employees about really wishing he could come back. And yet he was so angry. Now, had we stayed in touch with him, um, that wouldn't have happened. And so I was just thinking through that, and it's like, this is crazy. It's not fair, but let's look at the foundation of what's really going on here. Let's make sure we stay in touch with folks and make them our allies, and we're still going to be their allies, unless they're a dirtbag. They're and I have seen a few of those folks, and I want nothing to do with them. There's nothing to salvage.
Yeah, appreciate that. I like the idea. Honestly, it's one that I hadn't thought of, but I can see a lot of benefits to it. Treat customers the same way, right? If a customer's unhappy, like I view that as like a chance to really win them over. And so in this case, either the employer relationship didn't work out, doesn't mean you don't want to learn from it, or help them learn from it, or create more supporters and fans of the business that aren't in the business. I see all kinds of benefits to it.
No, to that point, I 100% agree with you. I feel exactly the same way. When I lose a customer, I wanna know what happened and what I can do to earn it back someday. How many times have we seen, folks get mad at customers when they leave? Like, "How could you do this?" That's crazy. I go right to, "Okay, how did this happen, and how can we do it better in the future, and how can we make sure this isn't happening with any other customers that we have?" And like, they're everything. People say, "Oh, you're the CEO and you don't know what it's like to report to anybody." So, are you kidding me? I've got 2,000 bosses, all my customers. I report to my customers.
What I think I would say that I see in this conversation that you're doing really, really well is first communicating what's important, communicating in a way that's following up on it and staying in touch. And to me, I see that as a huge thing that we're constantly working on solving. It's amazing how many people don't communicate well. They're not curious enough. They're too blinders on. The conversations are too shallow. Like the ability to communicate well is something that we're constantly working with our team on, and I feel like it'd always be there. Like it doesn't seem to come naturally anymore.
Yeah. Well, and we assume a lot of leaders just assume they know or they don't need to be involved in this. This doesn't concern them. One of the first things I do when I start with a new client or take over a company temporarily until we get the right leadership in place is I'll have a monthly all hands meeting. Everybody comes in. It could be 10 employees, it can be 500 employees, doesn't really matter. I'll spend, 15, 20 minutes talking about the business and where we're going. And then each functional leader gets to talk about the best work they're doing to contribute to it. And it is wild how every single time I do that, the feedback is, "Oh my gosh, this was so great. I learned so much I never knew before." And again, all these leaders like, "Well, I thought they just knew this." No, they don't. They never do. And I think as CEO, we should do that. And I've done it with every business. I would take one day a month, and it's a collection of different all hands meetings by functions or collections of functions where they get to showcase and they get to ask any question they want about the business, where we're going. There's no rumor mill that can last longer than 30 days. Like even when I sold Able Aerospace, I started talking to the employees about 7, 8 months before we ended up selling it. And I said, "We're thinking about this, and we want to, and I need everybody to keep this quiet. I'm not saying we're going to do it, but if we do it, I need the majority of you on board because you collectively got us here." And there was probably 20, 25% wanted nothing to do with it. Fast forward towards the end where we finally said yes to the company that bought us. There were only 2 or 3 employees that didn't want to do it. And the company that bought us said, and when they heard about my process, said we couldn't even have a meeting in the senior leadership team and not have it hit the media, the press. How did you keep it quiet? I said, well, that's just our culture. And
That's
I
great.
included everybody in that. But I love that, for the listeners, it's such a powerful thing to have these all hands meetings and just structure it simply. This is what's going on with the business. Give them a chance to answer questions and then showcase the functions. What's the best work you're doing? And they show up wanting to talk about cool stuff they're doing.
That's great. Lee, I appreciate you doing this for us again. We have a closing question that we're asking everyone. We're all about championing people here at Crash Champions. And so I'd like to ask you if there's an individual that you would like to take the opportunity to champion, maybe tell us about them and why you would want to tell us about them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, overall, all of my team members in the different companies that I operate, I'm just so fortunate. So I'd love to champion all of them as a collective group. But if I'm going to pick one, a few years ago, I hired somebody to be the president of a company that was one of our clients, and he eventually, within a year, became their CEO. The company was valued at 1.7 million. His name is Chris McShanig. Over the course of 2 years flat, he increased the value of the business to just over $48 million. And
Wow.
he couldn't get the deal that he wanted from, the owners of that, the founders of that company. And he said, man, I'd really love to start my own business. So he started his own business just about a year ago. And it's a virtual teammate, virtual staffing, company. And it's going to be so much fun watching him build this to be significantly bigger, and really doing it right for the VAs, virtual teammates around the world, and doing it so much better for the clients and not making it a commodity, making it something that really accelerates the value for the virtual teammates and for the organizations they're going into. So I want to champion Chris. I admire him. He's become a good friend, and it's just so cool watching him work, and he's going to build incredible value here. So my hat's off to him, and I want to see him keep doing it.
Great. Shout out to Chris and wish him all the best in the world. I'll be excited to hear the update. Thanks again, Lee.
It's so great to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me. And we literally could talk all day about this stuff. I feel like you and I are so aligned.
Appreciate your thought process very much. And I learned a couple things today. It's been great. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you want more PodCrash in your life, which of course you do, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Catch you next time.